Welcome back to Coffee with Yvonne, a show for creatives and entrepreneurs. I'm Yvonne Pearson, your host and the founder of Pink Dollhouse Marketing. And this week, we're going to be doing our Marketing Magic episode. And for those of you who are new here, Marketing Magic is when I take some of your favorite campaigns that you've seen on social media and break down the marketing segments and strategies behind them. But this week, we're going to do it a little bit differently because the marketing magic for the week is all about the Met Gala. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Met Gala for fashion enthusiasts and creatives is kind of like our Super Bowl. So what we're going to do in this episode, we're going to not just focus on favorite looks, but we'll definitely get into that because duh. But we're going to talk about the theme for the Met Gala, the history of the Met Gala, as well as the campaign rollout, going into things like the content strategy and audience engagement, as well as recognizing the inspo behind this year's theme and recognizing the dandy in my life, my grandfather. So grab your coffee and let's chat. I'm not going to lie to y'all, there's no coffee in here today. It's a little late while I'm recording, so hence I switched out my coffee for orange juice. All right, let me put down my non-coffee so we can get into these things, okay? Okay. All right. First up, let's talk about the history of the Met Gala. And if you see me looking down at my screen, I bring notes to the conversation so to make sure that we're having an informed and engaged chat. So first up in that history of the Met Gala, this source comes from Vogue magazine. And in the article excerpt, it reads, spirited by the promotional genius of the fashion's preeminent PR guru, Eleanor Lambert, who's responsible for New York Fashion Week, the launch of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, and the esteemed, International Best Dressed list. The Costume Institute launched its annual fundraising gala in 1948. Though interest in the party thrown in the name of fashion was already high, Lambert piqued the interest by calling the event the Party of the Year. See, that means title really is everything. By default, it was unmissable. The first Party of the Year was arranged at midnight as a midnight supper in the fall, not on the first Monday in May, and it was not hosted at the Met. By 1958, the Costume Institute had expanded its footprint at the Met, making the annual gala even more essential. But it was Diane Vreeland who helped make the Met what it is today when she served as editor-in-chief in the 70s and leveraged her political and celebrity relationships to build notoriety around the event. Pat Buckley took over for a brief time after her departure in 1987, and then Anna Wintour took the helm in 1995 to present. So I wanted to give just a quick history of the Met Gala because a lot of people see the discussion come across their timeline. They're like, why is this such a big deal? Who cares? It's just a bunch of people who are famous getting together and putting on some fancy clothes. The Met Gala initially has been a fundraiser. It still is a fundraiser to this day. However, things like, social media, content creators and celebrities have further amplified awareness of the Met Gala across digital and social platforms. So you've kind of seen that narrative about the true meaning of it. It's in there, but it kind of gets buried down underneath who's wearing what, who's expected to attend, and also, what the themes are going to be for the year. Let's talk about this year's theme for the Met Gala. This year's theme for the Met Gala, which happened on Monday because the Met Gala happens on the first Monday of May. And at the time of this recording, it is Wednesday evening. I waited a little bit longer to make sure that I saw the different articles and things come out about the Met Gala before recording the pod. Again, I love to have an informed conversation with my listeners and my watchers and just didn't want to hop on the trend and the first reactions as they happened. So, the theme for this year was super fine, tailoring Black style. And again, this came from Vogue. Vogue, helmed by Anna Wintour, is the key media outlet for the Met Gala. So anything that you hear me mention about resources and things like that, a majority of it is going to come from Vogue magazine or a similar publication that is in line with Vogue magazine. So pulling an excerpt from the article, based on the book, Slaves to Fashion, Black Dandyism, and the Styling of the Black Diasporic Identity, Superfine was organized by head curator Andrew Bolton with guest curator Monica Miller, professor and chair of Africana Studies at Barnard College, Columbia University, and author of Slaves to Fashion, Black Dandyism, and the Styling of the Black Diasporic Identity, a prize-winning 2009 book. The academic text provided initial framework for the exhibition, which examines more than 300 years of Black style and identity through the figure of the dandy. Often male, the dandy is a person who is exceedingly careful and deliberate, why can't I say that word? Deliberate about their appearance. Mind you, people might say, but extra in place of demure. For Black dandies, there is much more at stake, including power and agency, than mere vanity. In fact, dressing well or styling out might fall under the category of nonviolent resistance. And looking at that excerpt from the article, before we get into like things around, the marketing strategy, Fave Looks, and things like that, I love the fact that this was included in the explanation for the Black dandy, because for Black people, style is an act of resistance, right? And not to get too culturally deep right now on the pod, but essentially our style is our way of expressing our identity, especially in spaces where our identity has to sometimes be muted to conform to the comfort of others. And it's almost a way of visually protesting or having our own way of putting our stank or a stamp on things. For example, during the time period of slavery, when we were brought over here as cargo, we were essentially, and I'm not going to say essentially, we were stripped away from our essential culture in West Africa, where a majority of us who have ancestors who were enslaved came from. More specifically for me, when I trace my ancestry back, a lot of mine came from Sierra Leone, Benin, and Togo for my maternal ancestry side, and I have a lot of ties to Cameroon and Nigeria. When we came over here as cargo, we tried to hold on to the memories of our culture that then grew the roots for Black American culture. And a lot of that was reflected in our personal style. That whole term Sunday's best is not just a term, excuse me, it's not just a term for putting that ish on, right? Read between the lines, I say put that ish on. It is a term because Sunday was the only day that Black enslaved people had off from the plantation. They were allowed to go to church. And in their allowing to go to church, they would put on their Sunday's best. They would no longer wear the garb that they wore on the plantation all week long. They would look their best. They would be, seen as a portion of themselves, because they can't be their whole selves when they were enslaved, when you're someone else's property. And the idea of always looking your best has carried us from that time period of the plantation to now. Even to this day, whenever I'm leaving the house, I always think about what my mama says: when you walk out this house, you represent me. The idea of our personal style being a reflection of not just ourselves, but our family, our history, and our culture. It is always so important for us to look our best, to put our best foot forward. Because unfortunately, the way the world views us, if we are not, given a little something extra or looking presentable in public, we're already thought of sometimes at a lower social status than, say, our white counterparts. And putting that ish on, means a lot more than just putting on designer apparel or something like that. You can have your own version of your own dandyism through your personal style. Like right now, I'm wearing a Karl Lagerfeld sweater and t-shirt, but my head wrap came from the beauty supply store. But coordinated together, it works, right? Because my personal style is reflected through the pieces. You wouldn't even know who I'm wearing unless I told you. But the style itself translates through. And dandyism, and we'll get more into that in the episode, was reflected through this campaign. It was also reflected on that red carpet. And what I loved is I not only saw the impact of our culture felt through this campaign and through this theme, I also felt a recognition and a reverence of our contribution to fashion here in America. As much as there are arguments all over social media about whether or not Black Americans have culture, our culture is reflected in the thread of this country. It's reflected in the schools we built, the roads we built, the fields we cultivated, the inventions we made, the fashions we created in terms of trends. Because even my head wrap I'm wearing a head wrap too was also for Black Americans in the South, specifically in the area of like Louisiana, New Orleans, an act of resistance because we weren't allowed to show our hair because our hair was so beautiful that they wanted us to cover it up. So to deal with that, this law that was put in place for us not to show our hair, we started wearing these intricate head wraps that had jewels and feathers, and it was very decorative. And that style has been carried through various generations. And me wearing a head wrap to this day is another expression of my cultural ancestry, of my heritage. While it may be seen as me just covering up my hair, it is another way of me expressing my personal style and cultural identity. So getting back to the whole theme of this episode, which is about the Met Gala, the theme, like I mentioned before, is about the book Slaves to Fashion, Black Dandyism, and the Styling of the Black Diasporic Identity. And 300 years of Black style is quite a bit of expansive history to cover. To think about it, if we were to look at it from a historical lens, Black Americans have been here for 400 plus years at this point. So our style covering 300 years of that, it shows that, again, that thread, that impact is felt within the overall American culture. So looking at the campaign rollout in our next topic, let's talk about first the content strategy. Now, as a content girly, I love when a campaign kicks off correctly. And it's so important when you're dealing with such a sensitive topic, for one, that is personal to so many people who will digest that information, that you do it right. And also that you bring in subject matter experts and people who are either advocates for the culture that's being discussed or part of the culture itself. So what Vogue did, they first did teaser content. And for those of you who may not know what that means, teaser content essentially is when you just give a little sprinkle of what you about to put on them for the campaign. So it could be in the form of, like, say, a short form video that's roughly maybe like 5 seconds long. It could be text only. It could be, music with a quick, snippet of a video, behind the scenes content, something like that. So what they did, they put the teaser content on social media announcing the theme back in October. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Yvonne, October, that's so far away. If you think about it in campaign context, in reality, a campaign launch, if you're rushing, let me just clarify, if you're rushing, a campaign launch should start teasing or roll out maybe like a month, 2 months out if you're rushing. I prefer to start talking about things earlier, depending on the number of channels that are being used to talk about said campaign. So for it to start launching in October, it makes a lot of sense. One, they're launching in October right ahead of the holiday season. For marketers and a lot of us in that content and digital space, you're always looking at the calendar and how it's going to impact the work that you are doing. The time of year, it matters for a campaign launch. You don't want to launch too close to one holiday. You don't want to launch too close to something else or, a major event. Doing the teaser announcement in October, again, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. We're roughly 8 months out from the Met Gala. And by doing it right before the holiday season kicks off, you not only get that media attention, but you also start to get people excited about the topic and build that the noise on social media of getting people to talk about it and making it a trending subject of who's going to be there, what people are going to wear, etc. So how they announced it, they did a very simple post. So there was no heavy video or anything like that. It was a simple photo. And in that photo was an unnamed black dandy, and they announced the theme. I know for me, as soon as I saw it come across my group chat on Instagram, I immediately got excited because first I wanted to see how is Vogue going to tackle this, especially considering it is centered around Black culture. And like we talked about before, because the topic itself is so important to so many people, you have to be very careful about how you communicate cultural topics when you are not the cultural subject matter expert, or in this case, publication. While Vogue has supported Black creatives before and creatives of color, when this topic comes to mind, I think more in terms of Essence Magazine or Ebony Magazine. However, considering that Vogue is the host of the Met Gala, Essence Magazine and Ebony Magazine being the publication that leads the content strategy for this event, would not be in line with Vogue's media strategy. So I understand why Vogue was at the helm for this topic. Also, the topic itself for the Met Gala, they're decided years in advance. It's just ironic that right now, with everything that's going on, Black dandyism is a topic that was decided for the Met Gala. So let's get into the announcements of the chairs. I pulled this source from the Met, but when the Met Gala did their teaser, the content on Vogue with the Black dandy, then it started the rollout of who the chairs will be. Now, being named as a chair for the Met Gala is an honor in itself. And usually these are people who are top of their games in specific industries and have some correlation as well to fashion. So the co-chairs of the Met Gala, when they were announced, the chairs selected were A$AP Rocky, Rihanna's partner, Coleman Domingo, our favorite uncle, who put that ish on every day, Lewis Hamilton, and Pharrell Williams. Anna Wintour, of course, maintained her standing position as co-chair. Then, to add a little razzle dazzle, LeBron James was selected as honorary chair. Getting into the host committee, the Met will revive, or has revived, because this is now past tense, the long-standing tradition of a host committee comprising of actors, artists, athletes, designers, filmmakers, musicians, and writers that will support the evening's festivities. This committee members are Andre 3000, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Simone Biles and Jonathan Owens, Grace Wiles Bonner, Jordan Castile, Dapper Dan, Doechii, Ayo Edebiri, Edward Enifo, Jeremy O. Harris, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, Rashid Johnson, Regina King, Spike Lee, Antonia Lewis, and a slew of other names, including Sha'Carri Richardson, Angel Reese, Tyla, Usher, and Kara Walker. Now, this to me was a statement within itself, because when they announced the chairs for the Met Gala, they were all Black men, right? And we're not going to get into the discussion about Black American versus, those in the diaspora. If you Black, you Black in this conversation. And I just love the fact that Anna was so strategic in who she picked. According to the interview Pharrell did with the run through with Vogue, their podcast, Anna had discussed this with Pharrell 2 years ago after his show, I believe his first show with Louis Vuitton, as their designer or creative director, where he showed his menswear collection. And apparently she loved the show so much, in their follow-up breakfast, because they do like a breakfast every time she's in town or he's in town, she immediately asked him to be part of one of the chairs. So considering that she made this very strategic decision to include them in the Met Gala as the chairs was a smart move on her part. Anna Wintour has been in the game for quite a while, but she's very, very smart about what she does and makes sure that the right people are in the right position to amplify awareness for the work that they're doing at Vogue. One of my favorite parts of the campaign rollout were the Vogue covers. Each chair received their own Vogue cover and featured story for the Met Gala edition of the magazine. What I loved is each cover spoke to the essence of each person who was named as chair. The unique cover, I would have to say, in my honest opinion, was Pharrell's, because it wasn't even a photo. It was actually a depiction drawing of him from a black artist of Pharrell instead of a photo shoot. And then what they did with Vogue is they gave them their own cover, but the featured story, it rolled out as additional content on their digital channels. So if you have the Vogue.com app, if you are a subscriber or something like that, you got that exclusive content to your inbox, as well as those who are followers on social media. You saw those behind the scene clips from their interview. Then mentioned again the run through with Vogue. The Run Through with Vogue is, again, their podcast. So, again, we're seeing that amplification of own content. The Vogue podcast released those exclusive interviews with the chairs, but not just doing something on the surface level. It took a deeper dive into the personal stories of each of the chairs themselves, and also tied into the relationship, both the theme and also how the impact of fashion dives into the theme of their own personal story. Vogue, over a period of weeks leading up to the gala, really ramped up their content strategy. Like I said before, there was teaser content that was launched in October. But getting closer to the actual Met Gala, with any campaign, of course, they began to ramp up the actual content strategy. So you saw more engagement, more posting, more things being released, announcements, X, Y, and Z. The content release was a series of various things like videos focused on telling the story of the Black Dandy from lens across generations. And what was great about that content is they just didn't rest on being Vogue, right? They pulled in Black creatives who have social impact in this day and age. Yara Shadidi, Ayo Adeyemi, Aaron Pierre, Aaron Pierre, that's Mufasa, Janelle Monáe, Dapper Dan, and a slew of other celebrities. Then the other things that I love that they did a whole feature on, I believe, their social media, and then pull the content into Vogue.com about Black tailors and their impact. And when it comes to the Black Dandy, we have to be real with that as well, right? The Black Dandy buying a suit because of things like Jim Crow and, segregation and things like that, and blatant discrimination. A lot of Black people were not able to shop in stores the way their white counterparts were. The only solution for that was to go to a tailor. And you could go to a tailor, bring, a picture of something you saw in a magazine or something like that, or a catalog. And what they would do essentially is take that image and then put their creative spin on it based on what you want, and recreate that outfit for you so you can have something similar that you could find in store. Another thing that I failed to mention is not only were Black tailors were important, Black seamstresses were important as well. People like my grandmother, God rest her soul, were talented with the needle and thread. I always had the joke, when we would go over to my grandmother's house when I was a child, my grandmother had this sitting room, and I could see it in my mind's eye in her house. Now, mind you, the sitting room was not to be sat in. It was to be looked at. You did not sit in the sitting room. But every time I would go see my grandmother, We would go up to Pennsylvania to visit. The sitting room that would be off to your left immediately when you walked into the from the door, the entrance way to the main hall, to the left. I had a joke that every time we went there, the sitting room would look different because my grandmother was so talented. She could literally create a whole new seating area, curtains, drapes, all the things within not even a matter of days because she was that talented with a needle and thread. And outside of that, outside of her, creativity, which I definitely inherited from her and my mother, and my Aunt Anne, God rest her soul, it was just something to see how this woman would take something living in her mind's eye and create it from scratch using fabric. And to tie it up with a big bow when it comes to black tailors and black seamstresses, those were the black backbones to our community when it came to making sure that when it was time for us to put that ish on, we looked our best. It was those seamstresses who took our visions, who took our creativity, and allowed for us to express our identity through clothing, through fashion. And to this day, I still rely on my tailor to do things like, um, tailor my suits, my jackets, and things like that. I have a custom made jacket from a seamstress here in the area that she created for me from fabric that came from Sierra Leone that was brought to me as a gift. And every single time I put that jacket on, I get so many compliments. Not because the jacket is, a designer jacket or something like that, but because it's original and because it was made with my vision in mind. It was because I took my creativity and gave my idea to her, and she was able to translate that into a piece for me. So the Black Dandy and the connection between the Black Dandy and the tailor is so important when we're having this conversation because the fashions would not exist without their talent. So moving ahead, let's talk about the first look of the exhibit at the Met. What I love about this is if you ever gone to the Met and gone to the exhibit that highlights, the Costume Institute essentially, the mannequins are white. And that was one of my main questions I had in my head when they started talking about the exhibit. I was like, okay, but what the mannequins gonna look like? And apparently I was right on the money in thinking that the mannequins should be changed. So, for the first time, the mannequins will be all black mannequins. And these are mannequins that were custom made specifically for this event. And I love the fact that even the mannequins are intentional in the way not we, I'm saying it like I'm on a team at Vogue, the way that the Vogue team has chosen to translate this message. And what I love is they not only took in that 300 years of fashion, they not only took the cultural pieces that we may instantly recognize, but they also took the iconic pieces like Dapper Dan's collection. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Dapper Dan is a goat in hip hop and fashion culture for what he has done with designer prints and logos and translating that into streetwear and high end runway styles for hip hop culture. And then, of course, Andre Leon Talley's archive. Andre Leon Talley was a fixture at Vogue for a number of years and put his cultural stamp on many things that Vogue has done, and essentially was Anna Wintour's right hand person during his time with the magazine. And then moving ahead to personal stories. So we now have the teaser content that they did back in October. We have the announcement of the chairs. We have the behind the scenes content on social media featuring stars and starlets from the culture across generations, talking about their experience and the impact of the Black Dandy. We also have the inclusion of Vogue's podcast with behind the scenes interviews from the chairs and their personal experiences. And now we're moving into personal stories from the staff. The personal stories from the Vogue staffers was one of my favorite pieces of this campaign. It really shed a light on the people you may not see who are integral parts to how this event comes to life. And essentially, that's how it works a lot of times in creative industries. You have the face, you have the people everybody know for, having the big, famous, fancy roles. but there's so many people behind the scenes who make things happen. And tying that back into the Black Dandy, like I mentioned with the tailor and the seamstress, there are other people who are responsible for the Black Dandy's looks. We forget the hairstylist who did the hair every Sunday, the barber who cut the hair of the Black Dandy. We forget the shoe cobbler who made sure his shoes or their shoes were shine and fresh. We forget those little things like the jewelry maker who made sure his gold watch was working perfectly just in time for him to step out on Sunday or wherever he was going. Those are the people who are also part of the look of the Black Dandy and the cultural impact that was created behind these looks and this Met Gala exhibit. Then, looking at partnerships, Vogue and GQ work together. GQ is underneath the umbrella of Condé Nast. It is essentially like, a parent or Condé Nast is the parent company. GQ and Vogue are within their publications. So it makes sense for them to work together. What GQ did with Vogue, the men's magazine partnered with Vogue to release content discussing the theme and the importance within the Black community. Again, this is a big deal because Vogue usually is the one who handles the main media outlets for the Met Gala. Allowing GQ to also step in and be part of the campaign storytelling also is important because since it's focused essentially on menswear style, it makes sense to involve GQ into the campaign narrative. And then let's get into Anna Wintour's editor's letter. So now that we've talked about the rollout across various social and digital channels, now we're getting to the personalized content that comes from Anna Wintour herself through her editor's letter in Vogue. Now, I pulled this from Vogue's Instagram, so it gives a little bit of a snippet, so not the full actual letter. But in her editor's letter for the May 2025 issue of Vogue, Anna Wintour recalls her late friend Andre Leon Talley, a dandy among dandies. Praising his instinct for self-presentation, she writes of how, for Talley, who understood that especially as a Black man, what you wore told a story about you. Getting dressed was an act of autobiography and also mischief and fantasy, and so much else at once. Benefiting that stylish legacy, the gray panel checkered suit styled by Morty Sills that Talley wears will be part of the superfine tailoring Black style, like I mentioned before, in the spring exhibit at the Met Costume Institute. And to be honest, Anna Wintour has received a lot of criticism over the years since Andre Leon Talley's passing in 2022. It was a lot of criticism about, finding out that he was not, paid as adequately as he should be for the work that he was doing, and that essentially Andre should have been the one running Vogue itself. Now, I'm not going to speculate anything that I do not know because that fashion world operates completely outside of my sphere. But I do recognize that it is okay to admit that you may have misstepped in something and you may not have amplified someone as high as that you should have because you may be afraid of losing your position and your role. It is okay to admit that you made a mistake. But also it is okay to admit that you miss your friend. Because working with someone for that long and you work so closely together, it's not lost on me that she lost a very dear friend of hers. And considering that in the later years, I think they had a falling out. I don't know if they reconciled before he passed, but knowing that she lost her dear friend and finding out that she dedicated this Met Gala exhibit to him, in a way, it's her way of saying, I miss you, but I also appreciate you, and I recognize the impact that you have had, and I recognize the impact that your culture continues to have in the fashion industry. Finally, in the campaign, one little surprise I did not allude to, darling, in the beginning of the episode. I was included in the campaign rollout for the Met Gala. Yes, I know. I should have said something earlier, but I couldn't. So, the Condé Nast team, again, the parent company of Vogue, reached out to me about using one of my TikTok videos reacting to Coleman Domingo's Vogue cover in their campaign. And To say that I was honored was an understatement. And to be honest with you guys, it was content that I almost deleted because I was like, I'm playing around too much in this. No one's going to care. But again, you never know who is watching. And this is the second time this year that one of my pieces of content have been used in a major campaign. The first one earlier this year was my content I created reacting to Paradise on Hulu that was then picked up by the Hulu team to use in a campaign ad promoting the show. For the Met Gala, to say that I was surprised was not even the right words to put it. I really thought that I was being scammed at first. Because when I saw that they slid into my DMs, I did go and check the name to make sure that the person said who they were, and the name checked out. And what I love is the fact that my content was used as part of a test campaign because they were testing out new concepts. So my ad or my content ran as an ad on TikTok itself. And it was really great because I really love the fact that I've been a fan of the Met Gala for years, and to know that my content was part of the campaign promotion, it really made me feel like I was part of something bigger this time, essentially. And it really gave me fuel to keep going and to keep creating, because I know sometimes we get so caught up in the numbers, we get so caught up in 200 views jail on TikTok. But again, you never know who's watching and what impact you could potentially have for the content that you're creating. And what I love is that in my marketing takeaways, despite the political climate, as I mentioned before, that's happening right now, Vogue decided to stand 10 toes down about the theme that they selected. They did not allow for the actions of others or others who have chosen to back away from the topic of equity and inclusion to scare them into changing the theme. They stayed with supporting Black dandyism and in turn amplify their support of Black culture. Now let's talk about the campaign rollout as it concerns audience engagement. And audience engagement, for those of you who don't know, is when you see something like a pop-up at a store or a mall. You see like some kind of like interactive activation where they want you to test out something or take pictures or something like that. It's a way of drawing people in to get additional content or buzz going on various digital channels. So one of the things for audience engagement that were done was the Met Gala pre-party. The Met Gala pre-party was sponsored by Saratoga Water and Sephora, and it was hosted by Doechii. Now, Doechii is having a great year. She having a great year. And also too, Doechii has been working diligently, I think, for a number of years before she became famous. She's always been working. She's always been collaborating with others, but it's just now, this is just her time where the stars have aligned for her to have more visibility. So Doechii was the host of the Met Gala pre-party. I heard ASAP Rocky slid through for like a surprise appearance. And then let's look into those red carpet sponsors. So one of the big things for the Met Gala is the red carpet pre-show, right? Or pre-event. And on that red carpet, you have commentators who are asking people who they're wearing. You have a slew of photographers and publications from all over the world who are covering the event. The red carpet itself was sponsored by 1800 Tequila and eBay. You heard me right. eBay was one of the sponsors for the Met Gala red carpet. eBay, in turn, as a sponsor, also dressed a number of the attendees. And every single time, this is important, y'all, that a celebrity who was dressed by eBay was asked who they're wearing, they received a shout out saying that they were wearing clothes from eBay that were sourced from their collections. This is important because eBay got that media value and visibility. A lot of times people forget that these events essentially are walking commercials for these companies. When you have a way of including your brand in an indirect way that doesn't feel like an ad, people tend to pay more attention to what you're promoting and are able to then go for themselves to find out more. And another thing that was really great, 1800 Tequila, they actually debuted the first tequila-made diamond that was worn by Janelle Monáe. This was also strategic. Think about it. If you're a PR person, you can easily pitch a story saying Tequila 1800 is going to debut something you've never seen before. It's going to change the way we think about luxury fashion and the jewelry market in the next blah, 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 right? Also, having this worn by Janelle Monáe, who's known for not just her music and her acting abilities, because she is a great actor, but also her fashion was genius as well. Because the moment Janelle stepped on that carpet, she was photographed by a number of publications, which means also that Diamond was also photographed. So now Tequila 1800 not only has a star wearing their diamond, but they also have multiple pictures from various publications around the world who are now then talking about that because everyone's breaking down what Janelle Monáe was wearing on the carpet. So on the night of the Met Gala, if you are one of the people like me who it was kind of bad, y'all. I had my phone going. I was switching back and forth between various live streams before the Vogue one went live on YouTube. There were so many different things going on from a media perspective to keep up with the entire night. My notifications were going off consistently until roughly midnight that night, and then into the next morning when new information came out as well. So, in terms of audience engagement here, leveraging the Vogue's app. Vogue, using the app, built in additional ways for fans to stay engaged. They had a live chat on Vogue's app where subscribers were able to engage in real time to share their thoughts or even vote on their favorite best dress and things like that, as well as exclusive content on the app covering the gala before it dropped to main media. And what that means is essentially Vogue gave their subscribers the first look of the content that was discussed before it was disseminated out to the major media outlets. That also makes those who are part of the Vogue community feel like they're getting something extra with their subscription. There weren't just Black creatives on the Met Gala carpet, Black creatives featured behind the scenes content, Black designers, dressing these starlets. Even the chef was Black. I, ma'am, what? Anna, I see you. The chef who did the dinner for the Met Gala was Chef Kwame Onuwachi. And if you are familiar with that name, he has a restaurant in New York, but he also has a restaurant here in the DC area. Period. He opened up Dogon at the Wharf, Salamander, DC, a Black-owned hotel last year. The restaurant serves up Afro-Caribbean eats and was recently included in Condé Nast Traveler's Hot List of 2025. So when people sat down at the dinner, they not only had this immersive experience leading up to the Met Gala, the pre-show, the pre-party, all the things. Now even the chef serving their food is a brother. I love this for us. Let's get into the actual Met Gala carpet. The carpet, which in previous years was red, but in recent years has been changed to different colors to match the theme, was blue. The carpet was designed by Cy Gavin, who provided the creative direction for the red carpet design. And I pulled this article from Vogue.com as well. In an interview with Vogue, Gavin said he became fascinated with the spring's perennial growing outside of his upstate New York studio. To many, the bloom symbolizes the arrival of the new season. And since the Costume Institute fundraiser takes place on the first Monday of May, he felt a synergy existed between the two. Then there was the flower's scientific name, which stems from the Greek myth of Narcissus. Though Gavin admits that there are many interpretations of the tragedy, he honed in on one facet. When Narcissus sees his reflection for the first time in the pool of water, I became interested in that moment of self-recognition and appreciation, he says. Such a sentiment struck him as powerful amid this season's exhibition, Superfine Tailoring Black Style, which examines Black dandyism and identity. It is very easy not to see yourself clearly because of all the selves that people tell us that we are. And I was struck by the poignancy of that being also a sort of punishment. So essentially, the blue carpet, if you have not had a chance to see it across social media feeds, was an act of resistance as well. And again, it's how Black creatives tie in their culture, tie in their messaging through their art that remains important to us and how we continue to thrive and evolve despite any challenge that we face. And then finally, in terms of engagement, let's talk about Pharrell's After Hours Uno tournament. You heard me right. The brother held an After Hours Uno tournament. So this was in E! News, and in a quote from the article, during his 2025 Met Gala after party on May 5th, the Field star, who served as co-chair of the fashion event alongside Coleman Domingo, A$AP Rocky, Lewis Hamilton, and Vogue's Anna Wintour, treated his guests to several rounds of Uno. According to Vogue, guests could win one of 4 luxurious prizes: a Richard Mille watch, Tiffany & Co. diamond earrings. Oh, hold on now. A custom varsity jacket designed by Pharrell himself, or a Louis Vuitton trunk. Now, see, those are prizes. Those are prizes. Okay, I would like to see it. I would like to get an invite to this Uno tournament. You know, now I'm a stack. I do stack. I numbers. I don't cheat though, but I never read the rules to Uno a day in my life. But I know how to play the black way. So if you know how to play the black way, go ahead and invite me to your tournament, for real. Go ahead. Now the part that you've all been waiting for very patiently, by the way. Let's get into them looks, shall we? All right, so for this one, let me make it clear. There were so many looks on the Met Gala carpet that being able to break down all of them would be a double episode, which we're already coming up close on our time for our episode today, y'all. So I will try to keep it as brief as possible. But if you want to discover my real reactions of how I felt about the looks on the Met Gala carpet, go ahead and visit my TikTok to see my 2 videos with my first reactions from the Met Gala. So if we were to break down the Fave Looks by category, I did break it out just to make it a little easier. The first one we're going to talk about is cultural heritage and Black design excellence. First of all, Brian Tyree Henry. Come to the front, fam. Come to the front. You did that. You did that. Brian Tyree Henry wore a custom design with Nigerian brand Orange Culture. And baby, when I tell you to scream, I scrumped. When I saw him come on my screen, he ate that clean up. And come to find out, he actually was part of the design process in creating his look with a Nigerian designer. I love that. It shows originality. It shows that he has a voice and his own personal style. Then coming up next, and again, this is not in any particular order, Tiana mother frickin' Taylor. You ate it up, girl. You you ate it up. Woo! The girl was clean. Again, this was also something that she collaborated with Oscar-winning costume designer Ruth Carter. I love when celebrities collaborate with designers because, again, we get that peak of their own personal style and their personal taste. Tiana Taylor is one of those multifaceted creatives where she can do everything. She can act, she can dance, she can design, because she did have a limited edition collection, I think, with either Boohoo, whatever they want to call themselves, or Pretty Little Thing, one of the two. And she was able to translate her personal style along with the theme. I honestly think she should get best dressed for the night because it was just so intricate and extra in the best kind of way to reflect the theme. Then we have Doechii. Doechii was dressed in Louis Vuitton in the collection from Pharrell. I love Doechii's look because it was fun. It was very Doechii in terms of leaning towards her personal style, which is very much that, cool girl who is someone who can literally throw anything on and look great. But then to top it off, she had her fro. And the fro was just so big and moisturized, first of all, but it really gave that emphasis of black pride because another way we show pride is through our hairstyles. So I loved Doechie's look. Lakeith Stanfield, first of all, what a beautiful chocolate man! Lakeith Stanfield wore Ferragamo in collaboration with Max Davis. He looked so good. But Lakeith looks good in almost anything. I really feel like if we were having a definition of put that ish on, Lakeith would definitely be up there, at least in the thesaurus definition of other words for how you put that ish on, right? And then in our last two, we have Andre 3000. Now, I know before you come for me, I know Andre had a piano on his back. I know he did. I'm aware. However, there was a reason he had a piano on his back. So he was wearing Burberry, styled by Law Roach. The reason why the piano was on his back was because he dropped a surprise EP of original score of piano songs right after the Met Gala. So there was a reason for that. It was to promote his surprise EP. And then, respectfully, former not first lady, former VP Auntie Comcom, I added you to the list because we were just excited to see you. The dress was not my favorite. However, we were excited to see you at the Met Gala, so you fell under our Black Excellence category, okay? She was wearing custom off-white by IB Kamara. So let's go into statement making in terms of luxury and drama because dandyism is about drama, darling. We don't do basic like some of y'all did on that carpet. Sad. We do drama. As a culture, we love a good moment. Let's talk about Janelle motherfucking Monáe. Ma'am, you did that. You did that. When I tell you made a statement, Janelle Monáe clears every single freaking time. She wore a Tom Brown two-piece with a tequila made diamond, as we mentioned before. This collab was done with Paul Tazwell. If you're unfamiliar with who Paul Tazwell is, he's the first black man to win, I believe, an Oscar for costume design. He was the costume designer behind Wicked. And then Lizzo, waist snatch, Lizzo, waist snatch, Lizzo. Lizzo is up next. Lizzo wore a 3-layer corset gown by Christian Siriano. We love you, Christian, by the way, my fellow Marylander. How you doing, boo? And it was created in 3 days. Outside of that, Lizzo's nails were phenomenal. I love the black and white gown she had with the blonde hair. It gave very a la Cruella de Vil. I like the Emma Stone Cruella, just, for context. But her nails really topped off the look and emphasized that theme of black dandyism in terms of tailoring because her nails were sculpted to perfection. And then we have to give recognition to our folks in the diaspora, our Afro-Latino brothers and sisters, Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny had a sleek Prada look, and his look was just so clean, tailored, but still brought in that bit of fun with his color selection. And then to kind of speed along a little bit, for avant-garde and performance art, we're going to go into Damson Idris. Damson Idris came onto the Met Gala carpet wearing a Formula One race suit. And at first I was like, brother, the theme was black dandyism. It wasn't Fast and Furious, but we got a reveal. The reveal underneath, they ripped the suit. It was like one of those rip-away suits. It revealed a Tommy Hilfiger design suit tied to his F1 film promo, which is why it was a jumpsuit. It revealed a really great, I think it was burgundy suit underneath. And the boy looked good. He looked good. I love his look, and I love that he gave us performance art on the carpet. I think he was one of the only ones besides Andre who did some kind of performance tied to his look. And then we have Christian Lachman. Now, there's no designer listed for Christian. I did do a lot of searching, but I was unable to find it, unfortunately. but I loved his look. He served really great style. And I think Christian is someone who is just still a regular everyday person like the rest of us, but his star power has been amplified because he's been part of the Met Gala campaign. And then let's go into elegant, underrated, and mysterious. So Tessa Thompson, again, I could not find who designed her look. But she carried the theme with grace and impact. I love Tessa Thompson's look. She has such an allure about her that is really great. And also to give credit where credit is due, let's do Kerry Washington here. Kerry Washington's look was absolutely fabulous. And I believe gave a nod to her Olivia Pope style with the white hat. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it might have also been a nod to Diana Ross, but I could be wrong as well with the white hat reference. But she gave a really great look. It was very clean. It was tailored. I just loved it. And then finally, talking about those cultural accents and personal style statements, you saw grills, do-rags, a lot of brooches, a lot of natural and protective styles on the Met Gala carpet, and bold nails that further highlighted the power and influence of Black culture, streetwear, and cultural aesthetics. It was a really great carpet, y'all. I could not stop looking at my feed to see what was being expressed on the carpet, and I really appreciated the thoughtfulness of those who decided to lean into the theme and not be lazy. So to close out the episode, which is much longer than we have been normally doing in the beginning of the season, but I wanted to recognize Andre Leon Talley and the impact of the Black Dandy and the Black Dandy in my life. So the first person up would be my grandfather, William Lamar Stewart. And Grandpa, the boy was clean. He was clean. He had such a great sense of style. He had this air about him that he knew he was that dude when he stepped outside. Whether he was wearing his work uniform or wearing a suit, Grandpa had this aura of swagger and style that carried him from room to room. And my family is from the South originally. My grandparents were from Georgia. And knowing that the time period that they grew up in terms of the things and challenges that they may have had to face, because I've never had a conversation with my grandparents about what life was like in the rural South for them. But knowing that they still carry themselves with a sense of dignity and class and an aura that they knew that they were important and that they were someone despite what the world tried to tell them. And despite the fact that he may have had to deal with challenges because he did not know how to read and he had a elementary school education. The man was smart, but he was also creative. And with my grandmother, by his side as his wife, my grandmother being a talented seamstress, they always stepped out clean no matter what. And what I loved about my grandfather's style was him passing that sense of pride down to me and to my mother as his daughter. More importantly, to make sure whenever you showed up, you showed out and that you represented the family correctly in your own personal style. And no matter how you did it, even if the shirt costs $2 or $200, you're gonna make it look good because you got that Stuart swagger about you. And I love the fact that this theme gave us a chance to reconnect with those sides of ourselves that as we continue to evolve as Black people in our heritage, sometimes we forget that we're being carried by the hands and sacrifices of others so we can have the benefits of the life that we live right now. So moving on to Andre Leon Talley, who passed away in 2022, who again worked aside with Anna and wielded that huge influence in the fashion industry. And even though he held various positions, and for those of you who didn't know, he also worked for Ebony Magazine as a fashion editor, him being someone who was known for his huge caftans and larger than life presence, and him being known as someone who not only amplified the culture but gave opportunities for the culture to enter this very white space of fashion. He was the kind of person, from what I've read and the interviews I've seen, never shied away from his roots. He still went to his church on Sunday. He still donated to his church. He still stayed in touch with the people from his community. Andre Leon Talley was a reflection of the Black Dandy, in that the Black Dandy never forgets where they come from, but they always remember how much work they still have to do to make sure that their position is secured so they can create space for other people in the culture to move up and sometimes move past them to, live out their dreams and carry on the vision to the next generation. Black creatives are the backbone of a lot of things in the fashion industry, but continue to be a hidden influence and not recognized for the work that we have done. Well, we see our culture appropriated in so many different ways, from things like cornrows, when we see things like bamboo hoops or certain fashion that were considered ghetto now be considered mainstream. And people try to minimize the fact that a lot of these popular ideals came from Black people. It wasn't until it was put on another celebrity to be considered cool or trendy that all of a sudden it's now considered fashion. And like Andre, again, Black creatives continue to drive creativity, yet we are still underpaid and underrepresented in various spaces, from creativity to corporate. And it's a stark reminder, too, that unfortunately loyalty can only carry you so far. And I think for a lot of us creatives in this day and age, we are discovering that, especially in the digital space, that we don't have to play by this rule book anymore. Digital spaces allow for us to create our own rules, and also while still keeping holding true to who we are as a culture. Now that we have things like TikTok, we have, things like newsletters, Substacks, podcasts, we're able to amplify awareness in our voice in our own way. And we were able to see how creators like Andre Leon Talley, how creators like my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, may not have been able to fully live out their dreams out loud, but through us, they're seeing their dreams come true because of their sacrifice and hard work, and also the pride that they have instilled in us to be even greater than they could ever have imagined for themselves, because their dreams were limited by the people around them. So I'm going to close out this episode by reading a caption from Essence. Recently, they put it on social media about Andre Leon Talley. This is the day that Andre Leon Talley made. The steps of the Met are stitched in your spirit. Before the world knew, the language of luxury could have been a southern drawl, a knowing side-eye, and the full weight of Black history sewn into every stitch. Not to impress, but to influence. You are the definition of dandyism. Before the word knew how to spell couture, you were already cloaked in it, a walking thesis in taffeta, a sermon in silk. You gave us permission. You gave us presence. You weren't just talking about hemlines. You were expanding the conversation beyond the runways and understood the cost of being fabulous while Black. Because of you, this year's theme, Super Fine, Tailoring Black Style, feels not just relevant, but reverent. You are the reference. Andre, we don't just follow in your footsteps. We walk these steps because of them. And with that being said, let us close out and recognize that this entire campaign continues to remind us culture and marketing are inseparable. When done right, storytelling honors legacy, builds community, and sells without saying a word. I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Don't forget to follow Coffee with Yvonne on Instagram and Threads at Coffee with Yvonne. You can sign up for my newsletter to get personalized audio and video content, Coffee with Yvonne podcast episodes, and marketing magic breakdowns that you don't get on social media from your favorite campaigns by visiting the show notes. For my personal account, you can find me on Instagram at Yvonne_creative marketer. And to learn more about me and my business, you can find me at pink.housemarketing.com, and you can check out my website by following, going into the show notes. You can also find me on Instagram at pink.housemarketing. You can slide into my DMs. That's cool. And also, more importantly, creatives, I know we had a long conversation, but let's always remember to keep showing up, keep creating, and that your voice matters. I'll chat with you soon on Coffee with Yvonne. Okay, bye! Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Dollhouse Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.